This podcast contains subjects that may be disturbing and triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, sweet honeybees. Welcome to the Electric Honeypot, where energy is the nectar of life. In this hive, we know that energy does not lie, but sometimes people do. The entire point of this project is not to demonize other human beings, but it is to ask for accountability to help us grow and evolve as a collective. My name is Autumn, and I am so tired of living my life fearful of utilizing my voice to expose corrupt behaviors that manipulate, oppress, and abuse other human beings. I believe that we are all equal and we should all learn how to live in unity as the human race rather than dividing ourselves by these stupid labels that we made up just to divide ourselves, because we are humans first and foremost. This isn't the episode that I was going to record today, but what I was going to work on, I realized I need more time to work on it. So I thought I would record this one, especially seeing as how it is currently Martin Luther King Day as I am recording this. And I share the same vision and dream that he had of humans working together and living as one. I dream of a world of peace where we take care of each other. We care about the things that we all go through. I dream of a world full of humanity and empathy. I understand how heavy and dark the world can be because my life has been very heavy and dark. I have been through some very traumatic, horrible things throughout my entire lifetime. But I know that a better world is possible, but it starts with us learning how to listen to each other's experiences and asking, okay, well, how can we make this better? How can we avoid from this happening again? It starts with us coming together as a community and working towards something together as a community. In this episode, I want to talk about why all cops are bad. Now, this is not about creating hatred for other human beings. It is not about hating the people that put on the badge every day. This episode is about calling out the oppressive systems that those who wear a badge uphold. I want to start with the history of the police force in the United States, because the roots of the United States police force goes back to the early 1700s when you had slave patrols to help hunt, capture, torture, and even murder slaves who dared to escape from their masters, slaves who dared to stand up to their masters. You had these essentially primitive police forces within the United States that existed to uphold racism and human oppression, abuse. Once slavery was abolished, these same forces were then used to continue oppression and segregation from the 1870s all the way up until the 1960s. That was barely 60 years ago, you guys. There are still people living today that were alive during segregation. It is absolutely ignorant to think that racism is not still systemic within our police force here in the US. Racial profiling is still happening. The statistics on crime are significantly skewed against people of color because people of color are racially profiled by the police force. If you are a white person living in the United States, you don't have as many eyes on you. And there's more white people than there are people of color, so they don't get noticed as often. People of color are no more violent than white people are, yet they are made out to be more violent monsters compared to us, when the truth is, if you're white, you're just more likely to get away with crime. Your crimes are less likely to be noticed. Your crimes are less likely to be punished. There is a significant lack of accountability when it comes to white people committing crimes in comparison to people of color committing crimes. And then we won't even get into how the whole prison system is slavery, which capitalism is modern day slavery as well. There's just layers upon layers of slavery happening in modern day society, and then we just act like it doesn't exist anymore because they pay us money, which we then pay right back to them to pay for the most basic means of survival, such as our food, clothing, housing, water, healthcare. Absolutely ridiculous. But we're not even going to get into all of that. Talking about how white people are more likely to get away with committing crimes, I have experienced this in my own personal life with my mother's murder. You know, here is this man that murdered my disabled mother, and he may get away with it because the police did not care to properly investigate what happened to her. They have not cared to investigate any kind of suspicious circumstances or activities that have been surrounding her death, such as a large stolen trust fund that happened right before she died. My grandfather died, and I'm not even going to go into all of that right now. I'm going to save it for another episode because that's not what this is about right now. But I have spoken to other victims, family members who are experiencing similar things where there has been white people involved in especially heinous crimes, and they've gotten away with it, either by the police refusing to investigate it, not caring to investigate it, sloppily investigating it, or the people have just gotten off with like a slap on the wrist because of their skin color or their connections or their financial background. Whether it is theft, fraud, assault, domestic violence, even murder, if you are a white US citizen, you are much more likely to be able to commit a crime and get away with it. And more white people are committing crimes every single day. They just go unnoticed. They go ignored, while our racist system holds a magnifying glass over people of color. And then we won't even get into the statistics about police being involved in domestic violence either, because most police officers are men. And domestic abuse is extremely prevalent within the male population anyway, due to the patriarchy. That is just a problem within society as a whole, because women and children, people of color, we've always been viewed as less than men, particularly white men. It's just a result of the patriarchy. Even when police are good people, when they're not wearing the badge, once they put on that badge, they are enforcing laws that do not equate to morality, because laws have never been about morals. They have been about population control, going back all the way to ancient times in ancient Egypt, with pharaohs having guards, armed guards, to control the population and to protect the pharaoh's rule. The same thing is happening today with our government. It's no different. It is not about what's right and wrong. Laws are about order and justice, but because it has been left unchecked, order and justice has become oppression and manipulation and corruption. It's not about what's right and wrong. And there are a lot of things that are wrong with our police state and the things that are going on within our country. These police put on a badge and they uphold laws that are immoral, which in turn makes them immoral and unethical, regardless of what their content of character is when that badge is not on them. That is exactly why all cops are bad. And I'm going to talk about some of my own personal experiences with this because I have had multiple different not so great experiences with police not caring, police putting words in my mouth, changing the narrative to support a man, police saying that they don't agree with what they're doing, but if they don't do it, they will lose their jobs, proving that they're going against their morals. How can you call that a good person when they are admitting that they are denying their morals to uphold a law that they deem unjust? Ignoring behaviors that are harmful to humanity due to a code of brotherhood is compliance. Silence is compliance. It enables the abuse of other human beings, and that is why all cops are bad. The first situation that I went through that I want to talk about is the first time I was ever arrested. I mean, when I was 18 years old, I got a misdemeanor charge for some marijuana that wasn't even mine. A cop manipulated me and lied to me, pressured me when I didn't know my rights as an 18-year-old, a freshly 18 years old. I got this charge literally a month after I turned 18, and a friend had left some weed in my car. And this cop used fear tactics to get me to search his car because I was saying goodbye to a car full of people I knew right after I got off work and had a cup of coffee at this event called Waffle House Wednesday that one of my friends throws. As I'm saying goodbye, a cop pulls up behind the car and tells me to get in the car, even though it wasn't my car and I was trying to leave. Someone in the car threw an entire bag of weed all over the car. I was the last person to be questioned because the cop forced me to get into the only open seat, which was the driver's seat. He then proceeded to tell me that every single person in that car was claiming that all of the weed in the car was mine when I had literally just gotten off of work. I had a cup of coffee and I was going home to go to bed because I had work the very next day. I was scared as this cop was yelling in my face and barking orders. This cop told me that if I wanted to prove my innocence, I needed to let them search my car. I knew that I had 0.5 gram of weed in the center console of my car because a friend and I had smoked together the previous day and she left it in my car. The cop made me feel like I didn't have a choice but to let him search the car because I was going to be charged with a felony amount of weed from this other car that wasn't even mine, weed that wasn't even mine, unless I let them search my car. So as he's going to search my car, he's like, "Am I going to find anything in here?" I told him, "Yes, sir, you are. You're going to find weed in the center console." And what do you know? He found weed in the center console. And when he pulls this weed out of my car, he walks up to me, waving it in my face, going, "Looky, looky, looky what we have here, a little baggie of marijuana," and taunting me. I was 18 years old. My dad was out of the country, and I was terrified of what was going on. And these police absolutely took advantage of that. They manipulated me when I didn't know or understand my rights. They taunted me and mocked me after I had cooperated with every single thing that they had asked me to do when I didn't even have to, according to my rights. And then I went through this whole court process that cost me $1,400 when it was all said and done. The judge also almost sent me to jail over this half a gram of weed. I was sentenced at the exact same time as someone who was found with 2 mason jars full of weed. And he told me it was a black man who had all this weed. And the old racist judge straight up looked at me and he's like, "Tell me why I shouldn't send you to jail right now with him." Like, they just treat people horribly. But going on to the first time I was actually arrested and I experienced what my local jail was like for the very first time. I had this ex-boyfriend that I felt like shit the entire time I was in a relationship. He was extremely pretentious. I was not allowed to like anything that he did not like. I was not allowed to enjoy anything he didn't enjoy. I lost interest in all of my hobbies because every single time I tried to do something that I enjoyed, he would interrupt me and force me to do things that he wanted to do. When it came down to the end of our relationship, one of my coworkers and I had gone out with one of her friends, and I was really vibing with him. I kissed him at a bar one night. I came home and I told my ex partner at the time what had happened. I was completely honest about the situation. I told him that it made me realize how unhappy I was within the relationship and that I didn't want to be with him anymore. But we owned a townhouse together. He would bang bottles to keep me awake every single night because we worked on 2 different work shifts. Like, he would be getting home from work like 5 hours before I would have to go into work. So for that amount of time, he would bang beer bottles downstairs to keep me awake and to keep me sleep deprived. He made my last few weeks living at a townhome that we owned together absolute hell. And then I went back to the townhome after moving out. I went back to the townhome to pack up one day. It happened to be Friday the 13th, y'all. My very first jail experience was on Friday the 13th, and it happened to be on a day where I got a devil tattooed on my arm in honor of the holiday. Just absolutely wild. But I was packing up my stuff. As I'm packing up my stuff, I grab my mail. It's the very last thing that I intend on grabbing before I leave the townhome. I noticed a collections bill in my name within the mail, and it was for a bounced check that his mom had told me to cancel, saying she would pay something. So I sent him a picture of it and told him he needs to talk to his mom. I didn't want to have an interaction with him whatsoever. He came downstairs to ask me what the picture was about. I told him what it was about. And then he just looks at me and he's just like, "No, you can talk to your mom. I'm not going to deal with it. And you can talk to my mom. I'm not going to deal with it." And then he goes back up the stairs. This was the final straw for me. I shouldn't have followed him up the stairs, but I did. We got into a verbal argument about this bill because his mom had told me to cancel this check that she apparently didn't pay, and now I had a collections in my name. So he starts screaming at me, telling me how awful I am, telling me how I need to get out of his house, calling me a bitch, just verbally abusing me, telling me how I'm just this terrible person. Sorry. It's okay. It's in the past. Calm nervous system. So I picked up a bubbler that I had given him as a gift and I threw it against a wall because I was so angry at him. He shoved me into the dresser. I then tried to smack him. He shoved me again. He followed me around the room, shoving me. He called his mom. He's like, He called his mom at some point. Maybe it was before the physical violence happened. I I honestly don't remember. I It's all just kind of a blur once the shoving started. I remember vandalizing the house because he is telling me to get the fuck out of his house when it was my house too, and he forced me out of it by abusing me. So I snapped. I started vandalizing the house, screaming, "It's my house too." I opened a bottle of laundry detergent and I started dumping it down the hallway in front of our bedroom, saying, "It's my house too. It's not just yours." He grabbed me by my hair and threw me to the ground before dragging me down the hallway to the top of the staircase. The next thing I remember is just being in the corner of the top of the staircase, the landing at the top, just swinging, trying to get him off of me. I still had the laundry detergent cap in my hand. He released me at some point and I just bolted down the stairs, but I heard him coming down the stairs after me. So I threw a plate off the counter behind me to try to stop him from following me. As I made it into the front door, he grabbed me by the back of my hair again and slammed my face into the front door. And I started beating on the front door, screaming for help. And the man that my friend had introduced me to, the man that I had kissed, he was the one that came with me over to the house that day. But I told him to stay outside because I didn't want to cause problems when I went there that day. I literally just wanted to get my stuff and leave. He saw me beating on the door, saw my ex with his hand in my hair, shoving me, like pressing my face to the glass. He forced his way into the door, had to physically separate me and my ex. My ex came at me again, and this guy was just like, "No, you don't want to do that. You don't want me to get involved." And it was then I heard the police sirens outside. So I stepped outside to wait. My ex stepped outside to wait. My ex's mom had apparently called the police during all of this. And like, I even remember as I was like screaming and being dragged down the hallway, I could hear her on speakerphone in the next room screaming at me over the phone, telling me that I need to calm down when I was being assaulted. I was being physically assaulted, and this woman's telling me that I need to calm down. The responding officer was this older white man, like a good old boy type, of course. I mean, I live in small town Tennessee, and our police force is absolutely full of them. He spoke to my ex before he spoke to me. He came over and talked to me next. Once he was done talking to me, the young cop arrived and said that he was no, the young cop was already there because he was listening to me as I was talking to the older cop. He showed up like right after he finished questioning my ex. But the older cop told me that I was going to be placed under arrest and that the younger cop would be the one to transport me. They never questioned the witness that saw me being assaulted, the witness that knew why I had left the house because of emotional abuse. As I was being placed under arrest, the older cop was talking to my ex, laughing, and I could overhear him talking to my ex about how he's going to have to get an autograph from my ex's famous country star daddy, a Grand Ole Opry legend. At a later date, when I was finally able to view the police report against me, I realized that the responding officer, the older one that was responsible for writing the report, had fabricated my statements within the report to match the statements of my ex. What was listed in the report, it said that my story was the same as my ex's, when my story was not what was included within the report. He had just changed it to support my ex's side of the story. I had also denied speaking with an EMT on the scene because I was so shaken up about the entire experience. I mean, my nerves were completely shot. My ex obviously saw the EMT because he had a gash over his forehead and his eye was injured from where I had hit him with the laundry detergent cap, trying to fight him off of me. But I denied speaking to the EMT. The cop wrote that I had no visible injuries, but by the time I was released from jail later the next day, I had bruises all over my arms and legs. I had carpet burn down my arm, and my fresh tattoo had torn up skin on it. My scalp was also in pain. I took photos to document everything for court, which I didn't actually end up needing, but I will get to that in a little bit. Um, yeah, let me pause this. My dogs are barking. All right, gave me the opportunity to put some chapstick on, light an incense to kind of calm my nerves back down, because this is traumatic stuff to be talking about for me. Also, get some water. On my way to the jail, the younger officer that was transporting me told me as I was crying in the back seat that I know it's no consolation because you're still going to jail right now, but had I been the responding officer, I would have arrested him too. The younger officer had sympathy for me. He even let me have my phone in the back seat of the car after the older cop had told him to take it away from me. That way I could message the guy that was there with me to let him know that I was going to be in jail on a 12-hour hold. That 12-hour hold actually turned into a 16-hour hold, though, as I learned that it is common for the jail within my county to purposely not process people, so they are forced to sit in holding cells longer than necessary. This regularly happens on weekends because there were women in there that had been arrested before, and they said that the weekends are the best time or worst time to be arrested because they will purposely hold you there past your time, even if you are capable of paying it. I sat in this tiny little room that was probably only like 6 or 7, maybe 8 feet by 6, 7 or 8 feet, with 2 cement benches and a toilet. And I was in that room with about 7 or 8 other women for 16 hours. They kept it extremely cold in there, and I was literally in a skirt and a tank top because it was the middle of summer. I had multiple panic attacks while I was sitting in that room. There wasn't even a place for me to sit on the concrete slabs. I had to sit on the floor next to a toilet and a spot on the floor that looked like someone had thrown up. One of the women that was in there with me, she was detoxing from opiates while in there, and she kept nodding off. The women in the room would beat on the door asking for medical attention. And I remember one time one of the officers opened the door and just screamed at us to stop fucking beating on the door. She's a fucking junkie. She's gonna be fine. And it's just like, this is a fucking person. And then at one point, the woman loses consciousness and she falls and she hits her head really hard on the floor. She started bleeding. She had this giant knot on her head. We beat on the door again, and the corrections officers ran to the door screaming, "What is it now? You know, why are you fucking beating on the door?" And we're just like, "She's unconscious, she's bleeding." And so they finally dragged her out of the room. I still think about that woman and if she's okay. I hope she got clean if she is okay. Um but they kept yelling at us. I was hyperventilating. At one point the girls tried to get the officers to like cuff me to take me out of the room because I was having panic attacks, and the corrections officer that was asked told me that I need to stop being a fucking baby, that if I didn't want to do the time, I shouldn't have done the crime. I was assaulted and defending myself. I had a man try to shove me down a staircase, and I was sitting in jail while he was out free with a cop asking him for his dad's autograph. I went through court. I hired a criminal defense attorney, which cost $2,000. Fortunately, my grandfather paid that for me. My grandfather that I also suffered abuse from. This was when I started speaking to my grandfather again because my mom had told him that I was in legal trouble. He wanted me back in his life because I had gone no contact with him after he had physically struck me a few years prior. This was his opportunity to have me back in his life, so he agreed to loan me money. He drew up a contract for me to sign. He eventually told me that I wasn't going to owe him back because he was just like, "You're my granddaughter. I shouldn't make you repay me." So I hired this lawyer. My ex didn't show up for court on 2 different occasions, so my charges went into a retirement plea where as long as I stayed out of trouble for a year, they wouldn't stick to my record. But even if this hadn't happened and these charges would have stuck, like, I worked with animals, I would have lost my job. I wouldn't have been able to work in the industry that I was working in anymore. I wouldn't even be able to use an expungement because my expungement was wasted when I was charged at 18 for half a gram of some dirt weed. Like, it was mids. It wasn't even good stuff, you guys. And it wasn't even mine. But my horrible run-ins and experiences with the police do not stop there. Because back in 2021, I was struggling with my mental health after COVID. I was working 3 jobs after COVID because my ex left me with all of the debt from COVID, and the 1-bedroom apartment. I didn't get any help, so I started working 3 jobs. I was working anywhere between 80 to 100 hours a week. Between the 3 jobs, I suffered a work-related injury at Amazon where I had sciatica, but I couldn't afford to miss work at any of my jobs. So I worked through it. I was working through excruciating pain. I ended up getting this roommate who stayed in my dining room area, but this man was talking about me, thinking I couldn't hear him at night. I would be up late at night hearing him like talking about me, calling me a slut and a whore for the way that I dress, calling me a bitch. He even tried to get the man that I was with at the time to break up with me. Just all kinds of stuff. I learned that this man was like on meth and the addiction was getting worse. And don't get me wrong, I was using cocaine at the time. I was also using substances occasionally. But he was never home. And a fight was triggered one night where I told him that I wanted him out of the house because I don't trust him. He's doing all this stuff. He's never home, and he had agreed to help me watch my dogs while so I could pick up an extra job over 4th of July weekend to help pay for the apartment because he was only paying a third of it, and I still had debt left over from COVID that I was working on paying off. This fight escalated because he refused to move out. He said, "No, I'll move out in 2 weeks." And I told him that I wanted him out that night, because it was clear that he had a place to live because he was hardly ever home at that point. So why did he need to use my apartment as storage? I wanted him gone. I started packing up his stuff and taking it outside. He eventually started threatening me with squatters' rights laws. And I got so angry when he started doing this because this man didn't have a car. I had been helping him to and from the bus stop. I had been taking him to work some days. I had been helping him with food, and he was only paying a third of the rent. And he helped me with my dogs, and he sometimes cleaned the apartment. But I was doing so much, and here's this guy threatening me with squatters' rights. It triggered me. And I wasn't very nice about it. I threatened to break his possessions if he wants to play that game. And this triggered him because he threw his arm around my throat from behind me. I bit him to get him to release me, and he had a mark on his arm. I shoved him out of my apartment, and I just started having a breakdown. While I'm having my breakdown, I hear this man calling the police, telling them that he is afraid for his life after he had already been shut out of the apartment, and I was just in my house having a mental breakdown. I called my best friend, who I had been venting about this man to, and he showed up for me. The guy I was dating wouldn't show up for me because he was sick of dealing with the drama between me and my roommate. He was like, "I don't want to get involved." Luckily, my best friend was there for me, though. After we both talked to the police officer and described what happened, the officer told me that he agrees that the wound that was on my roommate's arm, there was no way that he could have received that kind of wound unless it was a defensive wound. My roommate was trying to say that he had placed his arm across my chest, but the wound was like right here on this part of his arm. Like, I physically cannot reach his arm if it were right there. It was around my throat. And so the officer made 3 different phone calls to his superiors trying to get out of arresting me because he did not agree with arresting me in the situation because it was clearly a defensive wound. But all of his sergeants told him that meat and potatoes state law that had just been passed by our wonderful senators who have their pockets lined by the for-profit prison industry within this state had just passed a law about how if the police are called for a domestic violence call, that there is no officer discretion. There has to be an arrest made. So the cop had no choice but to arrest me. He straight up told me that he does not agree with what he's about to do, but he is going to arrest me anyway because he will lose his job if he doesn't do it. So here is this cop that says he is violating his own morals, doing something that he doesn't agree with because it's his job to do it. But yeah, all cops are good, right? No, all cops are bad because this man, I could tell this man was a nice person. He was so friendly and so polite. He was kind and considerate throughout the entire interaction with me. After he told me he was arresting me, like, he even let me go change my shirt so I wouldn't be in my work shirt because I had just gotten home from work when all of this happened. That way I wouldn't be in my work shirt while sitting waiting to go to jail, sitting in the holding area of the jail. But here he is saying that he's doing something that's against his morals because it's his job to do it. All cops are bad. because laws do not equal morals. And when laws come before human rights and there is no room for any kind of discretion in a situation, it is oppression. It's abuse of power. It's about population control. It's not about what's right and wrong. I mean, look at World War II. Hiding the Jews, that was illegal. You could go to a concentration camp if you were guilty of hiding a Jew. So people turned over Jews to be murdered, to be exterminated. And that was the law. Is that right? I don't think so. I mean, anyone with a heart would tell you that that is not right. Anyone with 1 ounce of humanity left within their body would tell you that that is not right. And I want to tell you how that whole situation ended, because let's see, I had to pay this bail money. Everybody at the jail, like all of the cops that I talked to at the jail, said that it was bullshit that I was there too. Like I told everybody the same thing that I'm telling you right now, and they all said that it was bullshit that I was there. But when I went to court over this, I couldn't even have a public defender because it was a conflict of interest for the public defender's office, because apparently my roommate had had a previous roommate that he had held hostage at knife point, and the public defender's office had defended him for that. So they couldn't defend me because it was conflict of interest. You know, so he had a violent history with roommates, and my charges got dropped, thank God, because it would have, once again, affected my line of work. I was still working with animals, working with dogs, taking care of dogs, but I was also working as an axe throwing coach. And I was so scared I was going to lose my job when I told my employer that I couldn't come into work that day because I had literally just gotten out of holding after being arrested for assault. Like, thankfully, I had a manager that knew the content of my character, and he kept me on, and he was just like, well, if this doesn't work, like if the charges stick, we're probably going to have to let you go, but I'm not going to do anything until there's a conviction. I was so grateful for that because I had a lot of fun working at that job. But then that experience is exactly what led me to my next police experience, the worst one yet, that will be the one that I end this episode on. I know this is really long. I don't even know if anyone's going to listen to it, if anyone's going to care. I know there are people out there that are going to tell me that I brought everything that happened upon me, like everything that happened to me upon myself, but vandalizing something does not mean you should assault someone. Property can be replaced. People cannot. Health cannot. They're just fucking items, but I am a human being. And then all of these moments that I went through were literally triggered by people that were taking advantage of me and abusing me. After I went through all of that stuff with my roommate, my mental health just finally reached a point where I couldn't take it anymore. I was tired of working 3 jobs. I was tired of having sciatic pain. I was tired of feeling absolutely worthless. I sat on my bed one night with all of my medications in front of me and a noose around my neck. I was planning on ending my life. Instead of ending my life, I heard this voice inside of me. I've talked about it on this channel before. I call it, the voice of spirit, my higher self speaking to me. Other people may call it the voice of God, but this voice from deep down within me that was not the voice of Autumn told me to think it over, to just go to bed, cuddling my dogs, and if I still feel that way in the morning, then I can end my life. So that's exactly what I did. I went to bed with my dogs. The next morning, I still felt the same way. But rather than hurting myself, I made the decision to reach out to my mom. I asked her if she would be willing to watch my dogs for me so I could check myself into a psychiatric hospital. I told her that if I do not go to the hospital, I am going to try to kill myself. My mom told me that she wanted to help me, but to not make any decisions yet, she said she would call my sister, who was working in the mental health care field at the time. And at my sister's recommendation, we decided to go to an emergency room rather than straight to a psychiatric hospital, believing that this would help me get a bed placement somewhere quicker. We went to my hometown hospital rather than one in the city because we thought that it would be quicker that way as well. And this is just where everything went wrong. My mom stressed to them that I was completely voluntary, that this was my decision and that I wanted to go. But they placed me as involuntary because it was an ER. And because of this, what happened was I was up all night in this tiny cement room, couldn't sleep. I didn't have a TV. I didn't have anything to write with. They wouldn't even let my mom bring in books for me. So I'm just sitting alone in this tiny room in my head, thinking about how miserable I am. And I got upset because they told me that they would let me call my mom once I got to the back. And then once I got to the back and got admitted, they told me that I wouldn't be able to talk to my mom until phone time in the morning. I expressed how unsatisfied I was with the treatment and the quality of care that was being provided. They wouldn't even let me have my steroid that I was on or my inhaler for a serious upper respiratory infection. And they wouldn't let me have my gabapentin for my sciatica either. So I expressed how unhappy I was with the quality of care that I was receiving at this hospital. I eventually fell asleep. They never woke me up for the phone call time, even though they knew that I wanted to talk to my mother. Instead, I was woken up by a local county sheriff walking into my room telling me that he was there to transport me. I had expressed that I had trauma with secured vehicles resulting from my very first hospitalization when I was 12 years old, when I was being mistreated by my parents, and no one believed me. They wouldn't let me go home with my sister, so they sent me to a psychiatric hospital where they put me on medication at 12 years old. Because I didn't trust my parents, because I didn't want to go home with my parents. Anyway, I told them that I had this trauma with secured vehicles, and they told me that I'd be transported via an ambulance after I expressed I didn't want to be transported in a cop car. They sent a cop to transport me. I started crying immediately when he said he was there to transport me, and I started begging for my mom to be the one to transport me. I had decided to go there. It was all my idea. My mom could have easily driven me to the psychiatric hospital. No, they wouldn't let me. This cop just argued with me. And I told him that I'm not a criminal and I don't want to be treated like one. I came here to get help. He pulled his handcuffs off of his belt and he told me that if I'm going to act like a criminal and resist him, then he's going to treat me like one. He slammed me forward on my bed. This is like a man who was over 300 pounds that put all of his body weight onto my injured back. I had sciatic problems. I had a compressed sciatic nerve, and this 300+ pound cop climbed on top of my back after handcuffing me. He dragged me off of the bed without allowing me to catch my feet. I just remember hyperventilating and starting to see spots as we're getting closer to the hallway. I remember feeling limp. And then he stopped dragging me. He finally let me catch my breath. And then a security guard came and helped him put me into a wheelchair. I started complaining about how tight my cuffs are. That's why my wrists look like this. And the security guard agreed that those cuffs look a little tight. So the cop took them off and adjusted them. I had gashes within the sides of my wrists. And then he wheeled me out to his car. And he put me in the back seat of the car. This was August 1st in the South. And if you've ever spent a summer, midsummer down in the southern states, you know it's the devil's armpit. It's hot, it's humid. It does not take long for a car to feel like an oven. This cop put me into a cop car that was not on. It was not running. The AC was not on. Nothing was on. All the windows were up. And he closed the door. Him and his partner just stood outside of the car. As I went into fight or flight mode, I just tried to escape the car. I remember beating on the windows, hitting the ceiling with my feet, just anything to try to get out and escape the heat. They opened the door a couple of times to insult me. I was coughing up phlegm all over the back seat of the car because, again, I was getting over a respiratory infection and they wouldn't let me have any of my medications or my inhaler. The female cop told me how nasty I was, coughing up all over the back of their car. When I expressed that I was sick and I had asthma, she told me, I have asthma and I'm on an inhaler too, and I don't do that. Okay, lady. They cuffed my feet. They put a spit guard on me. They didn't even move the hair out of my face. So I had tears, snot, and sweat plastering hair to my face with this spit guard. I also remember at one point the male officer had opened the door and he asked me if that was my family over there that was watching me behave that way. But here's the thing. It wasn't my family because my family didn't even know that I had been transported until hours later. I had signed all kinds of paperwork at the hospital giving them permission to communicate with my mom and update my mom about every step of the process, and they never did. My mom called the hospital hours after my transportation and they told her that I wasn't there. She was completely blindsided and didn't know that any of this had happened. I don't know exactly how long this entire situation was taking place because it just kind of felt like time was frozen in that moment. I felt like they were trying to kill me. I know that they didn't open the front door of the car to cut the car on and provide me with cool air until they had watched me repeatedly slam my head into the glass. I wasn't really thinking about self-preservation at that point. I was just thinking about, I want my suffering to end. I felt like I was being cooked alive and there was no escape from it. When they finally decided to get into the car, the entire drive up to the psychiatric hospital, I got to hear the exact same kind of rhetoric that I heard when I was in the county jail. I heard them talking about all of the people that they had arrested throughout the previous weeks and how trashy these people were, how they were junkies, just absolute horrible things about other human beings. You know, these are people that our taxes pay them to hurt other people. We pay them to dehumanize and to degrade other human beings. And it's sickening to me. Not just my own experiences, but witnessing what happens to other people, hearing what happens to other people. And these are just stories that don't get swept under the rug, because there are so many more that we just don't know about because the victims are too scared to talk. I'm going to come back to that being too scared to talk here in a minute. But by the time I got to the psychiatric hospital, I was so distraught that I refused to sign paperwork stating that I trusted the hospital to give me proper care and dignity. I was placed on the wrong unit at the hospital. I was placed on a behavioral unit because they thought I was a violent behavioral case because of everything that had happened with that police and what the police had told them. I was just depressed. I just wanted to feel good about living again. And I got assaulted for it. And it completely ruined my life because I had x-rays taken at the hospital of my wrists because they were worried that I had fractures because I couldn't use my hands properly while I was at the hospital. And I had bruises all the way down my hands and through my wrists. Luckily, nothing was wrong other than deep tissue bruising. But my back pain got worse. I was hardly doing anything at the hospital, and I was having a hard time getting in and out of chairs, in and out of bed. When I got released from the hospital, my caseworker told my mother to never take me to the hospital because it's likely I would have to interact with police again to bring me straight to the hospital like I originally wanted to do. But after I got out, my whole life fell apart because I went back to work and my back pain worsened. I had like one normal day. I took a few days off and I went to a concert with one of my friends despite my pain to try to cheer myself up after everything that had happened. But then I went back to work and I literally worked one day before my back went down. I could not stand up straight. I was a foot shorter than what I actually am because I could not straighten my spine. I was walking bow-legged because of the amount of pain within my lower spine. I lost my 3 jobs because of it. I lost my apartment because of it. I had to move in with my elderly grandparents to avoid being homeless at 27 years old. I had an MRI done where I had to lay on my back for the MRI, and the images were so blurry because my body was having involuntary muscle spasms due to my L5, my lower spinal disc, compressing my spinal cord. I had moderate compression of my spinal cord after my assault. They had shoved it out of my sciatic nerve. Well, it was like completely compressing my sciatic nerve, and now it was in my spinal cord because of what they did to me. They nearly paralyzed me. I'm very lucky that I have my ability to walk today, and I have some absolutely incredible surgeons at Ascension St. Thomas to thank for that. And they were so kind to me. My doctor walked into the room, got down on his knees, held my hand, and he was the first doctor to actually acknowledge my pain, telling me that MRI looks incredibly painful. I can't imagine what you're going through. And I was burning alive from the waist down. Nerve pain is some of the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life, and I've been through some pretty painful stuff. There's nothing like it. And it's invisible pain. People don't see it. And then there'll be people that'll tell you you're faking it because they can't see it. But it's excruciating. It's pain that I would not wish on my worst enemies because no human being deserves to suffer like that. But going back to Too Afraid to Speak Up, my mom called the sheriff's department because she wanted to file a complaint. We were going to prepare to file a lawsuit against the police department for assault. But the police department told her that they were planning on pressing charges against me for damaging police property because apparently, as I was trying to escape the car, I ripped the light out of the ceiling of the car. So they used, which destruction of police property, I would have been charged with a felony. And it was a situation that they created, but it was used against me to prevent me from suing them. I tried to reach out to the Legal Aid Society, but I always got voicemail. I never got to speak to a real person. None of my calls were ever returned. They apparently were not taking new cases. I emailed nothing. So I was completely on my own. And in my state, you only have a year before you can sue for something like that. So I was silenced and they got away with it. The only saving grace of all of this is the fact that by a miracle, I was granted disability as a 27-year-old because I have the spine of an elderly person now. But yeah, there is a lot of fucked up behavior happening within our police system. It has gotten way out of control. They are doing the bidding of the elites, and they are treating people that are on the same level as they are like we're dirt, like we're the scum of the earth, just because they have a badge that tells them they're special. There's nothing special about them. They're just normal people like us. But they get on this ego trip, this power trip, because they have this authority over other people. And it is a job position that attracts people that have dark triad, psychological traits and personality traits, because those kinds of people like to have power over others. They like to see people suffer. They like how it makes them feel, to feel like they're above another human being. And even the ones that are good people, when they don't have the badge on, they're complicit in it. They go along with it. They don't speak up. They don't fight back against it. They think that becoming a part of the system, they can change the system. But no, that's not how it works. The system changes them as they are forced to go against their morals. If I don't do my job, I'll lose it. If I don't do this thing that I don't agree with, I'll lose my job. What's more important? Your job, the law, or morals and your humanity? I'll leave it there. I know this is long. There's going to be a lot of people that judge me for the things that I've shared here, but it is what it is. I know the content of my character. I know the content of my heart. I am a human being and I have made mistakes. I am a human being that has lived through a lifetime of trauma that I have worked very hard to overcome and become a better person over the last couple of years. But no matter what I have done, I deserve dignity and respect. Regardless of my emotions, regardless of destroying material possessions, I am a human being worthy of dignity and respect. And I'm just really proud of myself for how far I have come in my emotional regulation journey. A lot of the people that are in prison right now, they are also people who have suffered trauma, and rather than being met with a society that wants to help them, they're met with a society that wants to see them suffer and that dehumanizes them, but they're human beings just like all of us. The man that murdered my mom, he's a human being just like us. My grandfather that beat me with a belt, he's a human being. The men that took advantage of me when I was underage, they're human beings. We can call them monsters, but they are human beings and they also have trauma. The police, some of them have trauma and they're perpetuating even more trauma with the work that they do. And if we want anything to change, we have to start having these conversations. We have to start getting vulnerable and talking about the problems that are happening. We have to start holding ourselves accountable for behavior and the things that go on within our society. Systems that are born out of oppression do not just magically stop being oppressive on their own. You have to hold them accountable. This has been the Electric Honeypot Project. If this resonated with you at all on any level, please like this video. Please consider leaving me a comment down below with your thoughts, whether you think highly of me or you think I'm a piece of shit that deserved everything that happened to me. I'd love to hear from you. Show me who you are down in the comments, because the things that you want to say are just a reflection of what's going on inside of you. If you want to dehumanize me when here I am, even dehumanizing or humanizing people that you consider monsters. Oh my gosh. I could just rant forever. There's so many things that I want to talk about because I've just been quiet for so long. But I'm over an hour. I will stop. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for caring about my experiences as a human being. It truly does mean a lot to me because we all have a story to tell. All of our stories matter, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you have done. Your existence has a purpose here. The things that you have to share with the world have a purpose. We're on a floating rock in space. It's a miracle we even exist. Why do we create so much suffering in this world? I don't know. Stay curious and question everything.